with the, is that Michigan?
Yes.
Michigan Bureau Program Director and Campus Connections Service Coordinator for the Lake Superior State University, is a doctoral candidate in education leadership at Central Michigan University, presently engaged in dissertation work. Her areas of research include service learning in secondary and higher education, college access, educational equity, transition, and first-year student success. Her present efforts focus on college access for rural, economically disadvantaged and Native American students, as well as student success through service learning. In 2010, she was recognized by the Sault Ste. Marie tribe of Chippewa Indians for her efforts in enhancing the college-going aspirations among regional youth. Willie is a KCP Future Faculty Fellow. She is past member of 2 school boards and former community liaison for the U.S. Embassy in Brasilia, Brazil. She holds an BDS in Education Administration from NMU, MA in Curriculum and Instruction, and a BS in Business Administration. Her co-presenter is Stephanie Sabatini, who are practically related to me now. Stephanie is a Sault Ste. Marie tribe of Chippewa Indians member and a Sioux tribe native, Sault Ste. Marie native. She's worked in Indian education for the past 25 years with the Sault Ste. Marie tribe of Chippewa Indians, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, and Lake Superior State University. She's currently working at Lake Superior State University as director of the Native American Center and an adjunct guitar teacher. Fabulous. She also teaches entrepreneurship at Bay Mills Community College. Service learning, treat all life equally. I had 2 different pronunciations, and I'm going to, or not pronunciations, but native language, and I'm going with Kenny's. He says, Dbaadendizwin. And I'm going to turn this over now to these wonderful, wonderful presenters, and I'm going to look at the rest of this stuff.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Okay. Good afternoon, and thank you for coming. I'm Stephanie, this is Shelley, and we're going to talk about service learning today. And the title of our presentation is I have a hard time pronouncing this. It's Dbaadendizwin. Okay. Treat all life equally. And we heard Marty sing that in the song this morning. Incorporated into our service learning and the work that we do at Lake Superior State University with our students and our college students and our pre-college students, we try to incorporate the teachings of the 7 grandfathers throughout everything that we do. We thread it into everything from academic advising to our service learning activities to we have it posted all over our center so that students are reminded of it. And I think it's working pretty well like that. And the teachings of our 7 grandfathers, as you may or may not know already, are wisdom. And that says, do we have slides for that?
Yeah.
Okay. I wasn't sure if we did it.
Let me see if we
No. We don't.
not yet.
Okay. Wisdom, and that tells us that we should use good sense. And to practice absolute kindness through love and consideration for your fellow man and woman. We teach respect, to act without harm to anyone. And we also teach bravery, the courage to choose. We're faced with that almost every day in our work. We encourage students that typically many of their parents or grandparents did not attend college. So we get a lot of first-time college students, and they are always afraid. So we take them into the center, and we try to provide a smooth transition from high school to college. It's very scary, even though we're the smallest campus in Michigan, smallest public university in Michigan, and our campus to me is not intimidating anymore. It was at first, though. I was one of those students. I was afraid of math, and afraid of the college experience. My mother had gone to college, but I didn't see that. She went before I was born. So actually, she was an inspiration to me. And my grandmother taught in a one-room schoolhouse on Sugar Island, so she was also an inspiration to me. And we try to pass that along to our students that are first time in college and afraid. We also teach be faithful to reality, practice the truth, humility, which is treat all life equally, and honesty, to tell the truth. Okay. Service is embedded in our culture, and one of the examples that we use to teach our students is the Three Sisters planting. They help each other grow and spread. So they're based on service to each other. It's not something new, but we still have to teach it. And we're lucky that we have a lot of students that are open to the idea of that and willing to participate. This gives us an opportunity to unite native and traditional ways of knowing within the movement of service learning, which is gaining support too in the standard school systems at the K through 12 and at the collegiate level. Shelley works with me in the Native Center. We have the Native American Center. If you're ever over that way, stop and visit us, please. We always have coffee on, and we always have food too, so that's how we bribe people. She's done a great deal of research on service learning, and for that I'm so grateful. She's working on her doctorate right now and has incorporated a lot of that into her studies, and she's able to apply it with our current students too. Absolutely. So she's here to share what service learning looks like and how it builds on our existing culture. Should I talk about?
Do you want to share the story of Three Sisters Paintings? And then I can step back and talk about it, or shall I just move forward?
We can move forward to it if you want to, and I'll talk about some of this stuff after.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay?
Sounds good. We've been out of town, so we apologize. I've been out of town, and Stephanie's been out of town. We've been doing this by email.
Yes.
So, anyway, there's a couple of things. Okay, in our room, I'm sure we have people who are familiar with the story of the Three Sisters planting and the idea that we have three plants that help each other, right? We have the tall corn stalk, right, that provides the support that the beans need as they wrap around the corn stalk. And then the squash with the big leaves that cover the soil, help the fertilizer stay in the soil, help keep the soil moist. And I was thinking of one other thing. I was just in a bunch of classrooms, several of our high school classrooms, and we were talking about this story and how this story really is community. And it blends right into what we're doing with service learning. Let's see. So, to begin this conversation about service learning, please raise your hand and let me know if you're involved with service learning in your work, or if this is a new concept. Okay, I don't want to be too redundant, but there are a lot of understandings about service learning that conflict with each other. So I just want to talk about where I come from in understanding service learning and practicing service learning. All right, so here on the image are two pictures of what we would typically call a community service project. Up on the top right-hand corner is a food drive, down here on the bottom is a book drive. In this case, this book drive was being conducted out of a high school in Minnesota, and they were sending these books over to Africa. It was done as part of the DECA project. This food drive was to fill the local food pantry. Both of these activities benefit the community. Both of these activities bring forth some knowledge. As the students get involved with these activities, they learn more about their community, they become more civically aware. And a lot of times in the Eastern UP, where we do a lot of our work, and I work with a lot of the K-12 educators, it is that kind of a project that the educators say is service learning. So the students come in, they do a book drive, they learn about the good things of serving their community, and then that's done. We're done with service learning. When I ask educators what learning has happened, they always tell me, oh, well, they're learning more about how to give back to their community. All right, so let me move forward a second. Here's another service loan project. This is one that actually I sponsored. This is Kids Against Hunger. I know Central is the Garrett students at Central are doing Kids Against Hunger as well. And in this case, these are students from the Ojibwe Charter School that have come in and spent the day with us, and they're packing meal kits, a rice-a-roni kind of mix, that gets shipped off. 1/3 stays in our local community, 1/3 goes to the third world, and then 1/3 is warehoused for emergency responses. Right after we did this packing, we had the earthquake in Haiti. So we knew, because we were able to talk to the people at Kids Against Hunger, we knew that the meal kits that these kids had packed went to Haiti. We knew that. And that was really, when I told the students this, they really stood a little taller because they could see the impact of what they've done. And I want to share this little video clip with you. We're going to, whoopsie. The news came out and watched us do this.
How much food would you need for 30,000 meals? Well, some students in the Upper Peninsula could tell you. That's because they're participating in the Packing for Kids Against Hunger event today in Sault Ste. Marie. Students from Ojibwe Charter School in the Sioux worked side by side with Lake State students to pack some bags. The program is paid for through a state grant, and this year all the food will stay local. It's not just a way to help the community, but also get the younger students used to thinking about college.
It gives just this ambiance of feeling good because we know that we're helping out students that are following in our footsteps.
This is just a 2-minute clip, so.
How much food would you need for 30,000 meals? Well, some students in the Upper Peninsula could tell you. That's because they're participating in the Packing for Kids Against Hunger event today in Sault Ste. Marie. Students from Ojibwe Charter School in the Sioux worked side by side with Lake State students to pack some bags. The program is paid for through a state grant, and this year all the food will stay local. It's not just a way to help the community, but also get the younger students used to thinking about college.
It gives just this ambiance of feeling good because we know that we're helping out students that are following in our footsteps. We went to Sioux High, and we decided to come to Lake State. So, that's why we do it. We want to give back to the high school that we came from.
Over the last 2 days, students from Pickford schools and Sioux Area High School also participated.
Okay, so you didn't, now I'm going to need your help because I can't get this presenter back. Okay, but while they're getting me set up again, what you didn't see was Katie Everett, one of our college students, with 2 students that were helping her. And those students are called College Positive Volunteers. We are training them to interact directly with our local K-12 youth in a college-thinking way to help them create a mentoring relationship where they see that, where they can see that alumni from the local school have gone on to go to college, and they can too. Lake State has a very high number of first-generation students. We've got 40% of our students come in under the TIP program, which usually means first-gen. About 10% of our population is Canadian, about 5% is attending under the Michigan Indian Tuition Waiver, and about 10% of our population is Native American. So what you see there, or didn't see there, was these college students interacting with the youth in these moments of mentorship that involve service. We're still not at service learning. They were doing service. Okay, so the question is, well, what's the difference between community service and service learning? The difference is who's doing the learning and what learning is happening. So if we looked at the Kids Against Hunger project, and we linked this to a biology class where they're studying the water cycle. All of the meals that the students create have to be reconstituted with water. So it brings to life the concept of the water cycle when they begin to talk about how to create clean water. Or if we go back to the food drive. If you're in a geometry class and you link this food drive to your geometry class, you could begin to talk about concepts like area and radius and circumference. And you can ask the students to identify how we're going to move all of this food to the food pantry. All right, now we need to look at how large is this food. Well, that's all geometry, right? Now it's becoming service learning because we're linking a learning lesson that extends the knowledge of the students that's beyond simply civic engagement. And in terms of our book drive that was already going to go to Africa, let's say this was linked with a social studies class that already is talking about Africa. Now I can look at where are these books, and are these books appropriate? I lived 5 years in Brazil. We speak Portuguese in Brazil. I speak Portuguese. It's actually very hard to buy English books in Brazil. Well, if you send a whole bunch of English books down to Brazil, well, it's nice if it's a class that's studying English, but they're struggling just with literacy. So how helpful is it to send books down that are written in English and not in Portuguese? So these are things that we can begin to talk about. Now it's moved from the realm of community service into service learning. All right. We've been talking a lot about service learning here, and Marty has touched on these key components. The service learning project needs to have a realistic task that benefits both parties. So in the case of the book drive, books are going to Africa, the students in Africa are being benefited. If we've done our job, and this is linked appropriately to a social studies class, then the students in the United States, they're doing the book drive, are being benefited through their education as well. The same thing with the geometry class. If we link back, when we do the food drive, if we link back and now we bring to life concepts that maybe the students are struggling with. And we did this, actually. We held a special day on campus where we did a food drive, and we had the students calculate circumference and radius, and we created pancakes that you ordered by calculating pi, and different things like that. Now we're bringing to life lessons that maybe in typical instruction the students are struggling with. In the case of us, when we did this Pi Day activity, the teacher came back and said, I've had the darndest time with this one student. And now, after making the pancakes, he got it. So it can bring to life lessons that are already happening in the classroom. So we need realistic tasks. And they need to be bilateral. Both groups benefit, right? There needs, I'm going to go down to reciprocal exchange. That's what I'm talking about when I say both groups benefit, both groups gain. And then you need your reflection. And Marty's talked a little bit about this as well. In the form of group reflection. There's a lot of varieties on doing reflection. You can keep a journal, you can report out as a group. There's a lot of different ways that you can meet the reflection component. But what we do know is that if you don't meet the reflection component, then the learning that has taken place can't become evident to the students themselves. They don't necessarily know what they've learned. Let's see. The other thing I want to talk about for just a second is that in a true service learning project, who's doing the planning on the books to Africa? Yeah, the students. And what we get a lot of in our neck of the woods are teachers putting together a really good project and telling the students what to do to fulfill the project. And in a true service learning experience, what you do is you walk into the classroom and you say, students, we have a problem. And then the students say, what is the problem? And the instructor says, we need, our food pantry is completely empty. What shall we do? And that really is where the instructor should step back. Now, the instructor needs to front load some things. The instructor needs to have already made contact with the food pantry person, or have already made some other contacts with the press or whatever to move the project forward. But really, it needs to be in the hands of the students, because that's where you see the bigger gains. The more that the students take over the planning of the project, the more that they gain. And we'll talk in a little bit about some research I did with college students that demonstrate this. But the kinds of gains you can see, let's just take the food drive, for example. Let's just say that they're at the point of determining how they're going to get the food down the hill to the food pantry. Well, the teacher can stand up and say, I can call U-Haul and get us a truck. Or a student can say, hey, we can grab 3 trucks, and my dad knows a guy, and he knows a guy. And what you see happening when that kind of leadership takes over in the classroom is it's often leadership that comes from students who are not typical participants in the classroom. It gives the student that's on the fringes the opportunity to move into the center. So you see a lot of leadership gains when you place control in the hands of the students. Any thoughts, you're already engaged with service learning in some aspects, so, stop me, let's talk, we can, yeah.
This is how I approach my own ethnographic research in schools. In interviews, we've done people and principals and parents. In an interview situation, letting them have some control over the direction the interview goes is
Sure.
very helpful, as you can tell. And also, this reminds me of an area of literature some people call community-based research.
Right.
So it's up to your clients, the people you're working with, to define the problem.
Right.
To define the issue.
Right.
And as you say, so I don't know if you use community-based research concepts too.
We actually do. So when you're looking at community development, that same kind of language happens, is that you want to know what your assets are out in the community, and then they need to define the areas that need support. In Gear Up, which is a program I run, and let me step back and say, if anybody's not familiar with Gear Up, that's a college access program. Participation is defined by the school's free and reduced lunch rate. They have to have at least 50% of their students on the free and reduced rate lunch count. The assumption being that that's an indicator of poverty. And so if you have 50% of the population in poverty, the big bump from poverty out of poverty is usually post-secondary education. And, that's a big, broad statement. There's going to be examples where that's not the case. But for the most part, that bump factor is post-secondary. So if we're talking about schools that are already at 50% free and reduced rate lunch count, 50% of the students probably do not have someone in their home who has any kind of post-secondary education. And now we get into another word called social capital, meaning that they don't have someone to say, this is how you do it, or it's not scary to fill out the FAFSA, or, there's just a whole host of conversations that go along with First Gen, and I'm sure, I'm seeing heads nodding, so I'm sure this is not an unfamiliar topic with us. So when we use our college students to get into our K-12 classroom, that's what we're looking to intervene on. We're looking, and so many of our college students are first generation, so they get in there and they say, look, I had no one to show me the way, but let me tell you how I did it. And then they just talk. So we've talked about community asset-based community development, and we've talked about leadership. Oh, I know. I'd like to pose a question to you all. When we place this kind of control in the hands of the students doing the project, what do you expect the gains would be? What would you anticipate the outcomes would be for the students? What kinds of things would the students say that they experienced? Say it again. Responsibility? Yep. Responsibility. Tell me. Self-advocacy. Exactly. How about some more? Group. Yes. Okay. There's more. Every one of you could come up with something.
Well, and I imagine it has impact on school attendance.
Connectedness to the school. Exactly. Connectedness. And in higher ed, there's research on that. Vincent Tinto's theory of connectedness and student departure. Okay. Anything else? We've got some self-esteem building, right? We've taken the student that sits on the fringes, and maybe he's the guy that can rally the owners of the 3 pickup trucks to move the food that they've just gathered, and now he's standing a little bit taller, and he comes into the center. Leading a program, collaborating with adults in the community, calling up the press to get the press there, developing a press release. So there's a lot of things that begin to happen that, that bring out these leadership and self-determination and autonomy skills that service learning can bring about. All right. Now, this is an example. I'm going to talk about my research for just a second. And I really didn't want to do research on this project with K-12 kids because I didn't want to have to deal with all the issues with getting permission to talk to students in high school who are underage. So I did my research on the college students. And this is one example of what we have coined, what we have developed, called Showcase Campus Experiences. So, this is Whitefish Township School. Whitefish Township School had 3 students in the target grade that I work with. Right now it's 9th graders. So they have 3 9th graders. They have 33 students in their school overall, K to 12. They have 1 science teacher, 7th grade to 12th grade. So you can imagine that this is just, if you are not a project-based teacher, you're really not going to feel comfortable in this school. So they're wide open for this kind of experience. All right, so the instructor, the superintendent called me and said, Shelley, I've got these 3 guys that are about ready to graduate, and they just don't know where they want to go, and I think they're college material, but I can't seem to get them headed that way. And he said, I see your trailer driving back and forth in front of our school to Whitefish Point once or twice a week. And I know you all have this fisheries and wildlife major, and I'm thinking to myself, who better to study fisheries and wildlife than the kids who grow up on the shoreline of Lake Superior? So what can you do to bridge that gap? All right, so I take that information. Now he's giving me the problem, right? I take that information. I call the professor, one of our leading professors in fisheries and wildlife. I tell her the story. She said, well, let me send you 4 college students, and you talk to them. All right, so she sends over 4 college students. And they know that I tell this story on them all the time because they are my, this is just a great picture, and it's a story I've used quite a bit, so, and I've told it in front of them. But this young man over here in the blue jacket, his name is Doug. He was a super senior. And then right behind him, his name is Tyler, and 2 others you can't see. I have 3 freshman students. This phone call happened right at the end of the first semester. So they are 4 months out of high school, 3 freshman students, and Doug, the super senior. We get together, I tell them the problem. They say, well, what do you think? What do you think would be a good idea? All right. So, turns out that this school raises salmon in the classroom, and they release it in the spring. Again, we're project-based learning. They do a lot of project-based learning there. So, they developed a presentation that looked at the life cycle of the salmon. They developed a presentation that talked about the fisheries and wildlife major, and then they had some components that talked about their own personal experience. So out we go. Out we go into the classroom. Well, they brought in the entire secondary program to come and listen to them because this was a lot of fun. They really enjoyed this. And so Doug is there, and he's just talking away. We've already talked about the life cycle of the salmon, and he's getting ready to give them some hands-on visuals, and then they're going to talk about their own personal experiences because all of them are first-gen students. Well, if you look there, underneath his hand, there's this giant mason jar about this big, and it's full of salmon. They're about this big. And these salmon haven't breathed oxygen in a long, long time. Lo and behold, in the van driving out, that mason jar had smashed up against the side of the van and they didn't realize it. It had cracked the seal on the lid of the mason jar. So as he's reaching down to pick up the mason jar, the jar gave way. We have dead fish everywhere, all over the floor. Fortunately, not a bad smell. Now, he's a super senior, He's going to go out and be interviewing for jobs. He needs to have his wits about him. It didn't stop him. He just kept on talking as if that was just part of the presentation. Of course, we're going to demonstrate our salmon right all over the floor. Meanwhile, we're coming around with paper towels and we're cleaning it up and all that. So where I'm starting to talk about are the affective outcomes for our college students that participated in this. Public speaking, we all know the value of public speaking. Doug was able to do it without flinching. It didn't even stop him. We moved out into the hallway, we showed him more things, off we went. He didn't let his nerves get the best of him until we got into the car and we started driving back. That experience was really great for him. Now, we've got 3 freshmen, 4 months out of high school, that planned the rest of the project. All right, so we did a little research, And let's see, here's my research questions. What are the affective experiences that emerged for Lake State students who participated in College Access Showcase experiences? We did 12 of them that I tracked information on. And I asked them to do some reflections. I had some reflective prompts for them. And I wanted to know, do the Lake State students encounter transformative moments where they are changed? Do they experience a greater investment or vestment with their college experience? Do they own their college experience more? Do they experience a greater sense of community, understanding, or empathy? And then, does the applied learning component enhance their participants' education? All right, so the applied learning component, that's when they put together the presentation on the salmon. So we know that they're digging in deeper into their subject area and learning more. And that was positive. Let me see what my next one is. I'll keep talking over here. All right, so the feedback came back, and what we found out was that yes, indeed, working as a group developed this sense of group. The 3 freshmen have gone on, they've gotten so many awards, they have just absolutely flowered in their educational career at Lake State. One of them is going on to grad school, they're about to graduate this year, they've gotten scholarships. Doug went on, and he has done really well in his professional career as well, but especially for those freshmen, they just absolutely flowered. And they were working closely with the faculty members, so they developed these mentoring relationships with faculty. All 4 of them have no problem getting letters of recommendation. You know, we know that we intervened in a very positive way by bringing them into this project. Let's see here. What else? As you would expect for our educators in the room, we know from the learning pyramid that lecture, right up there at the top of the learning pyramid, students retain about 5% of what they learn in lecture. What they're paying $1,200 a class for. But if we can get down here and teach others, they retain about 90%. If they practice by doing, they retain about 75%. So by enfolding them into these service learning projects, particularly those that really build on their majors, we really build and strengthen their educational experience. And we saw that. We saw that with those. We know that across the board, the 12 students, the 12 projects that I assessed, all of them came back saying that they had an enhanced sense of connectedness to the university. And then another thing, when they're in group with each other, they have the ability to talk about whatever their college problems are. If they're not doing so well in school and they need to go get a tutor, if they can't get their meal card, if their meal card has run out of money, and it's the weekend and they got to figure out how to pay for meals. And the other thing that happens is when you walk into that classroom 4 months out of high school and you say, I'm going to be a research biologist to a bunch of secondary students, they absolutely believe you. You're going to be a research biologist, and by saying it, it helps you become it. So you get affirmation of aspiration. This is another one of our showcase experiences. This is a nursing student that taught several secondary students how to properly wash their hands. And again, that's just a simple, that didn't take a long time to plan. Doug's group spent months planning theirs. Hers was done in 3 or 4 days. But we find that we have the same kinds of outcomes. So what we found from the research was that through service learning, our college students have an opportunity for deeper inquiry into their content area. They got the opportunity to lead, the opportunity to speak publicly. We've talked about Doug and his fish. They had an opportunity to manage a project. It ended up enhancing their own sense of connectedness and enhancing their interaction with faculty. They had that opportunity to receive affirmation. The younger people said, of course you're going to be a research biologist. And their professor said, of course you're going to be a research biologist. They got picked by the professor to go out and do this. And then they have an opportunity to become more vested in their own personal education. These factors, the literature tells us, supports first-year student success. So we are looking at this now, and we wove it into a grant application to use these opportunities as a student success program for first-year student success. And up here on the top, this picture is a picture of chemistry students who developed a learning lesson for some secondary youth. They taught them how to make silly putty. They made exploding gummy worms. They did something else I can't remember right now. But again, we turn it right over to the college students. U4 put together a lesson. They put together a lesson inside their own major, working with a faculty member, and they delivered it to young people. All right. So Vincent Tinto has done quite a bit of research in student success. And he identified connectedness as the #1 factor for college student success. And he pointed out that we have these 3 windows of opportunity in the freshman year. If we get college students connected to the university in the first 6 weeks, the first semester, the first year, they will probably go ahead and graduate. If we don't, they will depart, and so it's called the stages of departure. There has been additional research isolated to Native American students. So how do we help our Native American students feel connected to the university? And what a lot of that research is saying is that, as we would expect, that the formula for connectedness is different. Connectedness is still necessary, though. So you need to, and this is what Stephanie and I do, and that it's what Colleen does. It's what a lot of us do, is we provide that unique venue for our Native American students that answers those needs, that cuts through the administrative bureaucracy. And then this is just from some of the research that I've been doing. We know that the importance of family, teaching our campus, helping our campus environment to understand how important family is and the opportunity to go home is for Native American students. Recognizing the development of identity. We've been talking about identity all day yesterday. Understanding and making faculty aware of this component called identity. Creating a cultural presence on campus. Offering opportunities for fellowship and mentorship with faculty members. That's what we do a lot of. Creating ombudsman relationships so that our students are better able to navigate campus administrative functions. That's a lot of what Stephanie does. But again, if you're in group working on a service project, a lot of those opportunities will develop naturally. Adequate and realistic financial assistance, we've been talking about that too, that there's a real gap between what Native American students often need to meet the financial challenges of going to college versus the formula, the Pell Grant formula. And academic supports on campus. So what I suggest, and what we are working on right now, is using this little format, this framework of service learning to help student success, and then within the broader community, and then further to help it within the Native community. Let's see. This is the name of our model. It's called College Positive Mentoring. There's Sarah Dina. She's one of the students that went out to Whitefish Township with us. And this picture is taken from a day that we bring about 1,400 K-12, primarily secondary students to campus. And we enlist the volunteer support of about 50 of our own college students and about 50 students from Michigan Tech. We've got students from Bay Nelson Community College. And they come together and they put out these interactive learning lessons, learning opportunities. And the kids come and learn and get excited about college. And then the college students take an opportunity to say, you can do this just like I did. We know that secondary students have 3 major barriers to going to college. One of them is development of social capital. They have nobody there to say, this is how you go, you're expected to go. Don't get sidetracked, you can make it. They need college knowledge. They need to know how college works. And they need someone who can confirm that, yes, in fact, what they aspire to become, they can become. Well, it turns out that college students need something similar right here. College students also need affirmation of aspiration and college knowledge. We've talked about that can happen when they're in these groups. And they need the opportunity to develop social connections on campus. So when we blend service learning the way we have in these college access opportunities, we've got that bilateral thing going on. Both groups are benefiting. We bring the college students back. We always talk about it afterwards. We've got the reflection happening. So we definitely fit the formula of service learning. Let's see here. Make sure I've covered everything I want to cover. Please.
Are these CPV trained?
Most of them are, but this did not get started with CPV. CPV came afterwards. We got started 2 years before they created CPV. So CPV, College Positive Volunteering. The Michigan Campus Compact put together a curriculum for college positive volunteering, and they've got a curriculum for training college students in the typical questions that they might encounter from young people, and we do put them through that training, just so that they tune in, so that they're ready to hear, oh, this is fun, but I could never go to college. And then the college students know. It usually comes in 3 forms. I can't go to college because my family can't afford it. I can't go to college because I'm not smart enough. I can't go to college because I don't like school. And so they've got 3 ready answers, and they jump right on those. What else? Any other questions? Okay, obviously I've got Gear Up. Gear Up is matched by KCP College Day. That's the state level. So Gear Up's Department of Education, U.S. Department of Ed funded, and then the state matches it with the state College Day grant, and then we come in and match it also. Then we do the training for Michigan Campus Compact. I have Vistas. So that comes into AmeriCorps. And 2 of my students that help me have Vistas. I've got, gosh, I've had so many grants. I have a venture grant right now that we're using to bring representatives from the community onto the campus to talk about community needs, to begin to jumpstart service learning in other venues. Granite program. You can talk about the Granite program.
We partnered up with the geology department at Lake State to write a grant through the NSF, and it was called the Granite Program. It's geological reasoning and natives exploring the earth is what that stands for. So we came up with an acronym for Granite, and then this program allowed several of our college students that were in the geology program to mentor some of the K through, actually it would have been high school.
Yeah, it was all secondary.
It would have been secondary students that they went on a 2-week excursion out through South Dakota and the Black Hills, and they did a lot of exploring and hands-on and networking and all of the things that we've talked about here. And that was a 3-year grant. We actually had enough money to go a 4th year. And now it's just starting to catch on, and everybody wants to participate, and we have no more money. So
That's just always the case.
it always goes that way.
All right.
Yes.
Well, yeah, related to that point, it's some of the grant opportunities I'm looking at for our program now at CU, they want information about your plans for sustainability.
Yes.
Right.
And it's like, bribe your college presidents and local corporate executives
Right.
to say, hey, we'll step in, because it just seems like there's a lot of time. There's these wonderful programs that really work, but you're constantly chasing money. And
we are.
It's
I am.
a real problem. And
Yeah.
that's why, this really bothers me, and I think this is where Bill Mendoza comes in.
Yes.
He needs to see more of this great work on the ground, and I know he's aware of it, but race to the top, well, whatever is what I say to that. But seriously, it would be nice if programs like yours could be sustained, because clearly in this environment, colleges don't have that kind of money and budgets to keep these things going. But these are the programs that keep their students enrolled. And so this is a macro structural historical problem that I hope maybe next year Marty could do more with that and have Bill Mendoza back.
That would be
Math.
great. But you're absolutely right. I chase after $250. I chase after little slivers of money to make it all happen. Anyway, but you're right. Okay, now my son did this for me, so I have to go click. So what is our number one barrier? I always tell the high school kids this. What is our number one barrier to going to college? You guys. We got to get them to graduate. All right, I turn it over to you.
Some of the college barriers that I see with my students, and it seems to be the number one, and you guys probably experience this too, is where am I going to get the funds to pay for college? Well, at Lake State, we honor the Native American tuition. The Michigan Indian tuition waiver is honored to the fullest extent there. The problem that we run into, and I'm sure that you guys have encountered this somewhere along the line too, is that we have more natives who are eligible for the Michigan Indian tuition waiver at Lake State now than we did in 1996 when Governor Engler froze the funding level for that particular time period of enrollment. Since that time on enrollments, I think it's almost doubled since that time.
50% are reimbursed and 50% are not.
Yes.
And so we're the highest percentage not unreimbursed in the state.
Exactly. So we eat about $700,000 a year, I guess, out of our general budget for that. But we still honor it. But that's the number one thing that I have as far as barriers go. Luckily, I have more students now that are going into the health field. I can locate grants for them through Indian Health Service and places like that, and some of the foundations will give money. But as far as that goes, that's one of the biggest barriers. The other biggest barrier that go ahead.
Is that standard when you go to universities? Is it 50/50, or does
No.
that just happen to be your?
That just happens to be us.
Yeah, and I can talk later. I can talk to you if you would like to. It's my dissertation topic.
Yes.
So I've done a tremendous
Yes, if
amount
you
of
have any of
research.
the in-depth questions about the Michigan Indian tuition waiver, Shelley's doing her dissertation on that right now, so she's the expert on that. Another barrier that I see is lack of family support. I'm sure you guys, this is like preaching to the choir. If they don't have the support of family, they tend to not stay in college. That's where Shelley and I come in. We have to act as moms sometimes. And we do what we do. We do what we have to do to help our students. A lot of my students at Lake State are non-traditional students. They're single parents. They experience all of the barriers that are related to being a single parent, and a lot of the barriers that's related to poverty. We have a lot of poverty in our area, and I see that a lot. And we're not above. I mean, we've helped students move, and we do things above and beyond just to make sure that our students, and I'm sure you guys do too, just to make sure that your students are successful and that they are getting through college and graduating. Those are some of the biggest barriers that I see. And I think our campus has changed a lot over the years. It's become more, I guess, native friendly, if you will, for lack of a better term. I've been there 20 years, and I can see a difference from when I first started to now. We're more accepted. People seek us out more. I give a lot of talks on the medicines and our culture to the nursing students. We have classrooms that come over, and we talk about the medicines. We talk about our culture. So that, and I have other professors seeking me out for that. When I first started, it was kind of the other way around. Hey, I'm here. I can share this with you. I can help you with this. How can I help you? You know, that sort of thing. But now we have people contacting us, and we have a lot more resources than we did 20 years ago. Just yesterday, I missed the conference yesterday because we had a geology professor come from Purdue, and he came saying that he had money and opportunity. So we had to wine and dine him, of course. And we're going to end up taking students down to Purdue, I think probably next year.
All right.
So to explore some of those programs in the STEM field. So
I think that comes back to some of what Bill Mendoza was talking about last night.
And I missed that talk last
The
night.
initiative that he's working on to develop for that.
Is there any questions that I can answer?
the Native American Center that's on campus
Yes,
funded by the school?
yes.
How did you add, when was that created?
That was created, it was early 80s, actually. I interviewed a previous director that was there when I was a student. And he had a tiny little office over in Brown Hall. And he used to have a joke. He said that, and many of you guys might know him, his name was Jack Kittle. I don't know if you know him or not, John Kittle. He was the director for higher ed for Sioux Tribe for years, and also he held this position 25, 30 years ago. Anyways, he was kind of instrumental in that. And since that time, he had a tiny little office. He always had a joke that if more than 2 students showed up at the same time, he would have to leave. So after that, we got a place in South Hall, which is the business hall on campus, and that was kind of a dungeony place. We had a couple of virus computers when I was a student there, and a coffee pot, and that was about it, and a couch. Now we have a row house, which is an old sorority house. It's kind of cool. We have our own. We moved into that in '93, and so we have a lot more resources to offer our students these days. We have copier, they have a computer lab, we have a printer. We don't charge for any of that. So we try to make it so that everybody can go to school, that there are no barriers. If we encounter barriers that we've never encountered before, we follow it through it. We really 9 times out of 10. So, but yeah, I feel very blessed. And then my tribe also helps. We have, I'm sure you guys are familiar with the 2% contact money. We apply for that every year. Usually they help us out in the form of, well, this year they've given us a student through the WIA program, the Workforce Investment Act. And then 2 years ago I was able to put in carpeting throughout the center to help us with paint and things like that. So, and we get furniture and appliances. We have a kitchen. It's nice. We have it's a home away from home for a lot of students.
How would you, I don't know if this is off topic, but how would you advocate to universities with a higher population of Native students to incorporate this into their facilities?
It's usually conversations that start like this between a couple of people, and then they go back to their funding places and people in charge, and it just kind of got started like that. And I think there was a very active group of Native students on the campus on Lake State back when the Native American Center first started. But I'm kind of in that same boat that you're talking about, because April and I need to get together and find out, I want to find out what she's doing, she wants to find out what I'm doing. We just kind of collaborate, I guess, through informal conversation.
If I can add to that too, I think you need to make it in the university's interest. So what happens is, first of all, are we talking about a Michigan State public university? Okay, so if we're talking about a Michigan State public university, we run into a little bit of a quandary. Lake State has the largest quandary, with 50% of our students who are 1/4 blood or higher coming in as non-revenue students. Even though we all know that it's a treaty right, that's not an issue. The campus still says we have a financial challenge, if you could say it. Now, it's very pronounced at Lake State. It is less pronounced anywhere else in the state. I think CMU is the next highest behind us, and it's about 1% of your total appropriation. For us, it's 6% of our total appropriation. So for us, it's pretty high. Anyone else, it's a little bit lower, quite a bit lower. And so you don't run into this issue of
Prioritizing or
Yeah.
making mandates that are not reasonable, or not in keeping with the original language or the intent of the Michigan Indian Tuition Waiver.
right.
I know that some of the universities have had to make decisions about financial need and things like that, and that's not the original intent of the Michigan Indian Tuition
Right,
Waiver.
exactly.
So it really puts
So I hope that happens.
creates hardships all over at every level, it seems like. So, are you thinking about starting a Native Center?
Well, I sit on during the Native American Advisory Board.
Okay.
And, I think having the advisory board, just since I've been on it, has grown to a greater need that we see supporter and suggesting there's much greater issues that we see.
There are.
So,
There's a lot of
maybe we
literature.
started out early, started out small,
Very small.
and
I would think if I were in your situation and you're looking to get those resources as for Native students, I would talk with people like me and April, and I'm not sure who's at Tech now because I know they've had a lot of recent changeover in staff.
Right.
But I would talk. Oh,
You need to talk to Colleen.
we need to talk to Colleen too.
Yeah,
Yes.
she's got beautiful info.
She's got all the answers. Would you like to come up here, Colleen?
The one not looking at me,
Yes.
There is quite a bit of literature out
There is.
there. There's quite a bit of literature out there, and some states are doing some really impressive things. Like Alaska's doing just the greatest stuff. They've got dorms dedicated that you can self-select into if you want to live in community. I mean, wow, that's really neat. Other universities are not going that far. So,
I think one of the things that we need to do as directors of the center is to create a consortium.
I agree.
Because we don't have.
No, the tribal higher education directors all have one. I've gone to I get invited to theirs periodically.
I've been there once or twice.
Okay, because it's statewide of all the tribes in Michigan, all the higher education directors have a consortium. I think that's a great idea because I think as far as connectedness goes, I think that's where we're lacking is that we don't have some sort of a conference or a consortium that we can all exchange ideas and resources because we're all. Oh, we have 2 minutes too? Okay. Another thing I want to talk about real quick is our community coalition. We've created a community coalition at Lake State and in the Sault Ste. Marie area and across the river. When I say across the river, that's our Canadian neighbors. So that's just a term that we've had forever in the Sioux. And we invite people from Rankin and Batchewana and Garden River to come over and pool their resources. A lot of the times we'll be planning the same types of activities. So this works out really well in the fact that we don't have to duplicate services. We're not having people decide which event or activity they want to go to. We can pool our resources and create one good qualitative event or activity that's beneficial to everybody. So that's how that helps. And we usually have it once a quarter. We bribe people with food, of course.
Stephanie's a good cook.
I'm good at that. Thank you. And I like to feed people too, so just
We're in a house. That's another thing that's really neat. I think if we had been in office space, it would be a little different. But we're in a house.
yeah, we have our house.
You know, you walk in, there's a kitchen, there's a refrigerator. It feels homey, and it's so neat at night when the kids. We've got a group of kids that all share one class at 6 o'clock on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. They bring food in, and then there's 6 of them run off to class together, and they're each making sure that the other one has studied, and that's what we want to see. You know, it's really neat.
And our center is open, not open, but it's accessible 24/7. The students, they just have to come to me, get on a list, and then we call security. The security will go over and let them in. They're responsible for locking it up, making sure the coffee pot's turned off, those sorts of things. So it really is a home away from home and for students, and I think a lot of students, it definitely helps because they don't just come in and sit on the couch. If they need help, if they need to talk, they can come in and talk to Shelly or I, and cry on their shoulder if they need to. Whatever they need, typically, we usually, so.
Before you go, I know we only have 2 minutes, but I have got some handouts up here, and somewhere there should be the other handouts. Did they make it? Do you know?
Right here.
These ones?
Are those?
That's not the one.
That's not us.
Okay, we will find the other ones, and if you want to stop back after the next session, you can pick them up. Growing to Greatness, this is a really cool brochure. This is just the beginning couple of pages. You can access it if you Google it online. It'll come straight up. It's 168 pages. But inside of it, in the other handout that we don't have, that you can come back and get, are a series of benchmarks for service learning. It's developed specifically for K-12. So if you've got K-12 people that you're working with who are trying to do service learning in the classroom, it's the benchmarks and standards for them. So it's very helpful. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Welcome, everyone.